Spine-chilling true tales of sinister remote places exposed, unexplained horrors await. The clock struck midnight, summoning shadows that danced through Sarah's quiet suburban home, amplifying an eerie silence that squeezed the air tight. Alone with her two children, Jack and Lily, the familiar hum of their neighborhood faded away. Jack, just 12, felt their vulnerable situation weigh down on him. He attempted to lighten the mood, flicking through late-night movies, but the rustling sounds from the overgrown backyard snared his focus. Unnatural, restless, unsettling. The twisted trees leaned closer, eyes in the dark, making his heart race. Was it his imagination, or was something lurking just beyond sight? As Jack kept one eye on the flickering screen, tension coiled tighter in the air. Shadows danced along the walls, teasing him with whispers of danger. "Just a movie," he murmured, but dread lodged like a shard in his throat. Then, he stumbled upon a hidden crawl space, dust motes swirling in the air as he pushed the creaking door aside. Inside lay forgotten relics, dusty toys, torn books, and a collection of photographs, all eerily resembling his own family, yet just off enough to chill him to the bone. Who were these families? What had happened to them? The hairs on the back of Jack's neck stood on end, a primal fear creeping through his veins. Meanwhile, Sarah navigated her demanding night shift, blissfully unaware of the deepening dread surrounding her children. Care gave way to a gripping sense of foreboding when Jack's frantic texts flooded her phone. "Mom, something is in the backyard. I'm scared." Her heart pounded as she read between the lines, feeling the distance claw at her insides. They needed her, but she had to maintain composure for her patients. She brushed a hand through her hair, each heartbeat a reminder of her children alone at home. Finally, desperation overcame her. "Stay inside, Jack," she urged during a tense video call. A glimpse of something, a frail shadow, lurking behind him sent chills straight to her core. "I love you, stay safe," she whispered. Yet fear coiled tightly around her resolve. Just as Jack's worries multiplied, the night grew thicker around him like a heavy fog. Ignoring Sarah's pleas, an unseen force compelled him. He ventured into the neighbor's yard, blinking against the dark, feeling eyes on him, unyielding and penetrating. The ground felt colder with every step. He noticed footprints disturbingly fresh yet disturbingly deliberate, leading him to the dilapidated old house, its crumbling walls and boarded windows echoing unspoken secrets. He pressed his face against a cracked window and gasped. Inside, something shifted, a figure moving amid dusty items, remnants of lives lost. The neighbor, often polite and friendly, was an enigma wrapped in layers of disquiet. The suburban sanctuary now transformed into an unsettling maze of hidden truths. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He sensed the danger swelling, and then a cold hand of despair gripped his heart. Behind him, shadows lengthened and stretched, tightening their grip, suffocating the last vestiges of safety. In the back of his mind, Jack heard Sarah's voice echoing desperately, but the feeling of eerie eyes was now palpable, wrapping around him like a vice. Something was watching, something that shouldn't be there. As the clock ticked ominously, the darkness settled deeper in their quiet suburb, a monstrous predator hiding behind the mask of normalcy. The phone buzzed again, but now it held a fearful message. "Mom, I think he's watching me." Adrenaline surged through Jack's veins. Terror flooded Sarah's heart. Who could they trust? As the night wore on, dread thickened like fog, and the illusions of their sanctuary unraveled. Something lurked, and the impending horror was closer than it seemed. What awaited them next? Jack's breath came in short bursts. He felt overwhelmingly exposed, like a sacrificial lamb wandering into the jaws of the abyss. The shadows writhing in the corners of his vision seemed alive, and instinct gnawed at him to retreat. Sarah's voice flickered in his mind, a beacon amidst the escalating dread. He couldn't turn back just yet. The pulse of curiosity drove him forward to the cracked window, where the shifting figure awaited. On the inside, muted colors and dust motes hung heavily in the stale air. Jack squinted harder, forcing his heart to calm as he searched for clarity in chaos. That figure, it was thin and hunched, gliding with an almost unnatural fluidity, scanning the room as if searching for something, or someone. Jack's heart plummeted when he realized the figure was wearing the same jacket he had seen his neighbor wear, the very neighbor who had once greeted his family with warm smiles. Fear hooked into his throat as a creaking noise floated from behind him. He flinched, twisting around to the encroaching darkness. Was someone else there? Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind felt charged with a malevolence he couldn't shake off. It was no longer just curiosity urging him forward, but a gut-wrenching terror that pushed him into action. He took a step back, ready to flee, only to feel the cold grip of dread clamp down like a vice on his chest. Suddenly, the door at the back of the house swung open with a booming bang, and a flicker of lantern light pierced through the gloom. The figure inside froze, its head snapping towards the door as eyes, dark and hollow, met Jack's terrified gaze with a twisted recognition. He stumbled back, his back hitting the rough wooden frame of the dilapidated structure. It didn't matter that the door was ajar. The house was clearly not meant to be opened, not by him. With a grounding force, the realization washed over him like ice water. He had to go. Jack spun on his heel, racing for the yard. Adrenaline raced through him like wildfire. He launched himself towards the fence that separated him from home, taking wild leaps, the thudding of his heart echoing louder than ever. Every second he spent in the neighbor's yard felt like an eternity. Yet, behind him, the earth shifted, and the neighbor's figure was now out of the house, moving with jagged, frantic motions. The lantern illuminated their pale face, casting monstrous shadows across the cracked ground. Jack skidded to a halt, rooted in place as raw terror overwhelmed him. Those features twisted into a grim smile, sickly and wrong. "Jack, is that you?" The sinister tone slithered towards him, inviting yet tainted with malice. It was a mockery of their shared moments. Every friendly wave turned into a weapon. Just like that, the man who'd once shared friendly conversations became a horror from his repressed nightmares. "Run!" A voice broke through the fog of his terror, a chorus from his phone. It was Sarah, her face fraught with panic. "Get home now!" As if electrified, Jack turned and sprinted past the fence, lungs burning with every desperate breath. He darted through his yard, past the welcome mat, where safety once resided. Slamming the door shut behind him, he twisted the lock, eyes darting to the windows, expecting pursuit to spill over the threshold. In the distance, he heard it, a low, guttural laugh floating through the night. It echoed impossible promises of darkness, lingering menacingly in his ears. "Mom!" he cried out, panicked hands trembling as he reached for his phone. No response, only the cold flash of the screen as it illuminated the room with increasing dread. But he felt it, the unmistakable thrum of something outside, just beyond the walls. A whisper of breath, a rustle of branches, now too close for comfort. He turned towards the living room window, instinctively stepping closer, scanning for any sign of movement. The world outside had grown quiet, yet the atmosphere crackled with tension. And then it came, a chilling knock, echoing through the silence, deep and deliberate. It sounded like a proclamation, a summons to something beyond reason or comprehension. Jack's heart raced as memories flooded back to cautionary tales. He felt the icy wash of dread as he mouthed what had become a haunting question. What if he's not the only one watching? As he stood there, heart pounding, a new primal fear gripped him. Because outside of the door, no longer human, darkness had taken root, and the hunt had only just begun. Panic clawed at Jack's throat, each pulse a reminder of how close the nightmare was to bleeding into reality. His eyes darted about the dimly lit living room, searching for anything that might offer protection. Shadows clung to the walls like hidden threats. Each corner felt suffocating, as if the house itself had turned against him. Another knock came, sharper this time, strong enough to rattle the very foundation of his terror. The sound echoed through the hollow rooms, vibrating in his bones. Sweating, Jack pressed his back against the solid door, heart racing like a freight train. He could hear the steady rhythm of footsteps outside, accompanied by a low whisper, slithering through the darkness like an insidious serpent. "Jack." It was his neighbor's voice, twisted and mocking, slithering through the cracks of his sanity. "Why are you hiding?" it asked, dripping with false concern. Jack clenched his fists, remembering the warmth of past exchanges, merely fleeting moments now twisted into something grotesque. "Get away from there!" Sarah's voice erupted from somewhere deep in his mind, but Jack could hardly focus. The weight of dread pressed heavily on his chest, each heartbeat threatening to explode. He turned around quickly, seeking a way out. The living room became a battleground of shadows, but the kitchen offered escape. It was the elbow of the house that led to a back door and the alley beyond. He dashed across the floor, trying to stifle any noise, praying the floorboards wouldn't betray him. Keeping his breath shallow, he reached the doorway, glancing back just as the knock transformed to a terrifying rattle. "Jack, I'm coming in." The voice verged on laughter, playful and sinister. Jack felt his stomach twist violently. He would not let that thing inside. He opened the kitchen door slowly, holding his breath as the hinges creaked like a tortured soul. The night air was cool against his skin, a welcomed relief from the suffocating confines of his home. Sneaking a glance back, he braced himself, ready to sprint. As he slipped outside, the crushing darkness enveloped him immediately. Distant streetlights fought against the gathering gloom, their flickering barely illuminating the path ahead. Jack focused on creating distance between himself and the horror within those walls, pushing through the gate into the alley, a temporary sanctuary that felt more like a trap. He paused, breathless, listening intently. A shuffling sound echoed behind him, the soft crunch of gravel that wasn't his. Jack's heart fell, dread pooling in his stomach like poison. He turned abruptly, but there was nothing, just the quiet breathing of the night and the shadows that loomed. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself. The words felt hollow in his throat, and then he remembered, the faint flutter of his phone in his pocket, the lifeline to Sarah. He yanked it out, hands shaking as he punched in her number. No service. His stomach dropped at the realization, leaving him feeling exposed, like prey stripped of its defenses. Jack glanced around, trying to find somewhere dark enough to escape, to hide. But his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden brush against his leg, a presence, a whisper of something disrupting the still air. His breath came in short gasps as he looked down. A rat? No, something bigger. It crawled low, slinking through the filth of the alley. But what cemented fear deep in his marrow was its eyes, reflective, shining with unnatural light. The creature paused, its thin body contorting, twisting to reveal the same pallid face he'd seen on his neighbor. Now worse, eyes bulging unnaturally. Jack's body froze, terror flooding his senses. "Jack," it hissed, "time to come out and play." He turned to run. But where to? The alley split into dark corners, each one beckoning with the promise of more horror. The path he'd thought was an escape led deeper into a nightmare he couldn't comprehend. Just then, another sound resonated behind him, a chorus of footsteps, many all heading in his direction. He had become their target. The hunt was on. Where would he hide now as the horde closed in, breathing down his neck? The walls of the night were closing in, and the darkness kept unveiling more threats. What if he was not alone in the shadows? Jack's feet pounded against the asphalt, alive with a primal urgency. The skittering sound echoed behind him, drowning out the frantic drum of his heart. Darkness dripped around him, every shadow seemingly alive, every whisper sending icy fingers creeping up his spine. "Keep moving," he chanted to himself, the mantra barely keeping panic at bay. He ducked into an alleyway that branched off the main street. The air was thick and damp, wrapping around him like a shroud. Dim, flickering streetlights cast jagged shadows that danced ominously, taunting him with their unpredictable movements. His breath hitched as he rounded a corner, expecting a dead end. Instead, He found a narrow passage between two brick houses, just wide enough for him to slip through. With a grunt, he shoved his body through, the roughness of the wall scraping his shoulder. But he felt no pain. Survival took precedence over every other thought. Behind him, the footsteps grew closer, echoing in a way that suggested more than one pursuer. Jack's heart raced, each thump matching the rhythm of his footfalls. He stumbled, sharp gravel digging into his palms as he braced himself against the ground, peeking back into the alley. There were shapes moving with disturbing grace. Shadows merged, their forms elongating and twisting, as if they could mold themselves like clay. Jack's breath caught. There were too many to count. He needed to find a way out. He pushed himself back to his feet, glancing around for an exit. The passage opened into a courtyard filled with overgrown weeds, and at the far end stood a towering chain-link fence. Jack's heart leaped with a flicker of hope. He sprinted toward it, feet pounding against the cracked concrete. Just as he reached for the top of the fence, a high-pitched laugh rang out, slicing through the night. "You think you can escape?" The voice crawled under his skin, sending tremors down his spine. Every ounce of determination surged inside him, but the sound of rustling drew closer, like a wave of predators closing in on their prey. With a desperate heave, he scrambled up the fence. Thorns from the wild honeysuckle lining its base clawed at his legs, but he didn't stop to feel the pain. He swung his body over, landing hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. Panting, he pushed himself back to his feet and looked around. The street was eerily silent, the once vibrant world now draped in an emptiness that wrapped around him like fog. And then he saw them, figures lining the rooftops, faces pale and expressionless, their eyes glinting like polished stone. Jack's stomach churned. Their lips didn't move, but he felt the unholy whispers flowing through the air, taunting him. "Come play with us. Forever." Instinct screamed at him to run, to keep moving. He darted down the street, adrenaline coursing through his veins like fire. But even as he ran, he could feel their gaze on him, an unseen force pushing him towards the center of a sinister web. He spotted a house at the end of the street, its door hanging ajar, a flicker of promise. He raced over, heart pounding, praying it was empty. He dashed inside, slamming the door behind him and leaning against it, gasping for breath. The interior was dark, the air stale, filled with the musty scent of forgotten remnants. Jack squinted into the shadows, trying to find an escape route. That's when he heard it. A soft rustling from somewhere deeper within, followed by a voice that chilled his blood. "Welcome, Jack, we've been waiting for you." His body locked in place. The walls felt alive, closing in around him. Where was he? And who, what, was waiting for him? In that moment, as uncertainty gripped him, the noise grew louder, becoming a chorus of whispers echoing through the hallways. The darkness pulsed with an energy, a predatory hunger that begged for him to embrace it. But how many were there? As dread cascaded over him, one question reverberated through his mind. Were the figures in the shadows under his skin, or were they something far worse? When the truth revealed itself, would he have a way out at all? Jack's mind raced through possibilities as he stood frozen, the ominous whispers weaving into a bizarre symphony. Ads for horror movies flickered in his head. This felt like one of those flicks, only this was real. The air thickened, smothering him with dread. "Jack," the voice cooed again, a seductive invitation wrapped in malevolence. The rustling grew, mingling with the echoes of his own breathing. He strained to see deeper into the shadows. Were they lurking just out of sight? Tendrils of fear slithered up his legs. He had to move. With a burst of courage, he pushed away from the door. The darkness screamed for him as he dashed into the house, sliding on the damp floor. Ancient floorboards groaned with his weight, threatening to give way. There was no going back. He raced down the narrow hallway, heart hammering like a frantic drum. His ears attuned to every sound. A window rattling, a door creaking. He glanced into rooms, each a glimpse into despair. Cobwebs draped over forgotten furniture, rotten food left to fester, peeling walls that seemed to ooze despair. His eyes darted as he moved, searching for something, anything. A hidden door? A way out? Just when he thought hope might be slipping away, he saw a flicker of white at the far end of the hall. A door slightly ajar, light spilling through like sunshine breaking a storm. "Find him!" a voice bellowed, splintered and wet, shattering the stillness. Panic shot through him. They were coming. There were no more choices. Fear propelled him forward, crashing through the door with brute force. The room was dimly lit, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness he'd just escaped. Dust motes drifted lazily through the air like lost souls. But there was something odd about the room. Old photographs lined the walls, faces staring out with grave expressions. Their eyes felt too alive, tracking Jack's every move. "Get out!" a voice hissed from the corner, harsh and urgent. Jack spun to find a figure crouched in the shadows. It was a man, disheveled and wild-eyed. Jack's pulse quickened. "They know you're here. You shouldn't have come." "Who are they?" Jack stammered, skin prickling as the realization unfolded. "No time," the man hissed, almost shaking with an electric tension. "You need to leave this place. They'll devour you." As he tried to process the warning, a low growl emanated from behind him. The man's eyes widened in terror, and before Jack could register, the figure lunged, pulling him back just as the door swung violently against the wall. The laughter erupted, decrepit and joyous, echoing like a horrific choir ready to feast. Shadows flooded into the room, writhing and undulating like snakes from a gaping mouth. "Not him, he's ours," the darkness shrieked, and Jack felt an icy squeeze around his heart. He stumbled backward, crashing into shelves that toppled like cards. The photographs shattered, glass splintering everywhere. Desperation kicked in. He clawed his way through the wreckage, his instincts screaming to run as the shadows lunged toward them. But the man roared, "Through the window, now!" Jack hesitated, torn by the choice of saving himself or helping the frantic stranger. The options clawed at him, but the surge of shadows was relentless. He couldn't afford to think twice. With a leap of faith, he bolted for the window, praying he wouldn't be caught. A sickening crunch sounded behind him as he shattered the glass. He leapt through, feeling sharp shards cut into his flesh, but the pain was nothing compared to the festering dread of what was pursuing him. He landed outside, heart in his throat, blood coursing down his arm. Jack spun to look back, but the window was already closed. The shadows pulling the man in, darkness swallowing him whole. Breathless and wide-eyed, Jack stared at the darkened house. The whispers had faded, but the weight of the encounter pressed down like lead. Who were they? What did they want with him? And most importantly, was he safe? The street was hollow, silence wrapping around him. But as he turned to run, he felt it. The breath of something cold brushing against his neck and a voice whispering last words that hung ominously in the air. "We're not finished with you yet." He bolted into the night, a chill spreading through every inch of him. What awaited him in the shadows? Would he ever truly escape? The woods surrounding the house loomed like silent sentinels, beckoning Jack deeper into their tangled embrace. He sprinted blindly, the darkness eagerly swallowing him whole. Every rustling leaf felt like fingers tracing his skin, and every snap of a twig underfoot echoed in his mind like a gunshot. Panic burned within him. He thought about the wild-eyed man, about the shadows that had devoured him. What had they been? Ghosts? Demons? A nightmare he couldn't escape? Jack had never been superstitious, but the air thrummed with something he couldn't name. A tangible malevolence that reached out with invisible claws. He stumbled, catching himself on a tree trunk. The rough bark bit into his palm, grounding him for a terrifying heartbeat. His breath came in clouds of frost, each puff mingling with the creeping fear that anchored itself in his gut. He turned back, eyes darting through the underbrush, half expecting to see the shadows pouring from the house in pursuit. Nothing. A chill trickled down his spine. The silence was maddening. He knew he couldn't stop. He had to get as far away from that dark place as possible. He took off again, legs pumping, adrenaline flooding his veins, propelling him into the heart of the woods. Branches slapped at his face, but he ignored the stinging pain, focused on escaping. He crashed through a thicket and skidded to a halt. Ahead of him lay a clearing, moonlight spilling onto the ground like spilled ink. Breathing heavily, he stepped into the light, feeling an odd sense of safety if only momentarily. But that fleeting sense of calm shattered when he noticed the ground. Splotches of darkness breaking the pale surface, shapes shifting as if alive. Jack leaned closer, dread pooling in his belly like lead. It wasn't dirt beneath the grass. It was ash. "What is this?" he whispered, horrified. A voice hissed from behind him, low and disembodied. The remains of those who couldn't escape. Spinning around, Jack's heart seized in terror. The shadows from the house had materialized again, coiling around him like serpents ready to strike. "No, I got away," he gasped, feet frozen in fear. "We're not finished with you yet." The voice echoed again, a mocking whisper that sent prickles down his spine. The shadows drew closer, swirling and intertwining, gaining form. Faces twisted in agony hovered just out of reach, their empty eyes locked onto his. Jack staggered back, feeling the chill of their breath. "What do you want from me?" he shouted, a desperate plea spilling from his lips. The air crackled with malevolence. "You are part of the sacrifice now. Join us." "No, I won't." Jack's voice rose in anger, fueled by fear and the desperation to live. With a raw scream, he broke from the shadows and sprinted back toward the trees, the earth slipping beneath him. He needed to escape, or the darkness would claim him too. He ran faster, branches snagging his clothes as if trying to pull him back, but he refused to let them. Each step he took felt heavier, the shadows still trailing, taunting him from the edges of his vision. He burst through the tree line, lungs screaming for air, and found himself on a narrow path. Where was it leading? What was waiting at the end? But he had no choice. He pressed on through the night. With no end in sight, Jack stumbled across a weathered sign flickering in the dim light. It hadn't seemed to belong. The symbols were strange, letters that sent a rush of dread through him. And then he heard it again, the whispers rising into a crescendo. "We're not finished with you yet." In that moment he realized the truth. The house hadn't been just a haunted structure. It was a conduit, a nightmare that thrived on fear, his fear, and the thing trailing him now knew his every step, every thought, waiting for the moment to swallow him. Just when he thought he could run no more, the path forked. One way back into the forest's grip, dark and foreboding. The other led to a dim light flickering in the distance. Safety? Or another trap? Each path felt like a noose tightening around his throat. Jack stood at the crossroads, heart racing furiously. Which choice would seal his fate? And then he heard it again, a word trailing, echoing in the valleys of his mind. Choose. Would he evade the encroaching terror, or would he enter a much darker abyss? His decision would echo in the shadows long after he made it. Jack took a shaky breath, glancing down each path. The forest loomed ominously behind him, dark and silent, while the faint flicker of light ahead seemed to promise something. Hope or doom, he couldn't tell. He could feel the whispers wrapping around his mind, pulling him toward the darkness, urging him to turn back. Choose. The word clawed at him, jagged like broken glass. Sweat dripped down his forehead, stinging his eyes. He could almost feel the shadows slithering closer, eager for his decision. He forced himself to glance back. The shadows were there, their forms now morphing into grotesque shapes. Human, animal. A blend of the two, a monstrous nightmare that made his skin prickle. They beckoned him with ghostly hands, the edges of their bodies fading into swirling blackness. He turned back toward the paths, heart thumping in his chest like a drum warning of danger. Go to the light. Something inside him pleaded. He took a step down the path of flickering illumination. With each step, the warm glow grew brighter, luring him with a false sense of security. His instinct screamed to run, resentful of the hope he might find. Yet he pushed forward, compelled by distrust of what lay behind him. As he approached, Jack's heart sank. The light revealed a cabin, a dilapidated structure swaying on its foundations. The windows were dark, with an eerie silence wrapping around the place like a heavy blanket. The door creaked slightly ajar, inviting yet foreboding. Hello? he called, voice cracking, echoing into the emptiness. No response, just the whisper of the wind and the rustle of leaves, the only choir in this cursed land. Anyone there? His words sounded small, lost in the vastness of the night. Slick sweat rolled down his back. He glanced over his shoulder. The path behind him seemed darker now, the shadows more alive. They had condensed, creeping towards him, reaching for him with skeletal fingers. He had to make a choice, no more time to waste. Jack stepped forward. The door creaked open as he touched it, reluctantly revealing a musty interior. He hesitated. The smell hit him like a wave, rot and decay intermingled with something sweet, like burnt sugar. Had someone lived here recently? Or was it a trap? What if this is just another part of the game, he thought bitterly. What if I'm walking into the maw of whatever preys on me? Just as he took a step inside, shadows whipped around him, enveloping him in icy grasp. He felt their unearthly breath creeping around his neck, chilling his skin, a reminder that his choice was not his own. "Join us," they hissed, the amalgamation of voices twisting together like a dark symphony. Refusing to give in, Jack lunged into the cabin, slamming the door behind him, pressing his back against it. Darkness swallowed him, heart racing, mind racing faster. He could hear muffled whispers just outside, growing desperate as he held firm. "Do you really think you can hide?" one voice questioned, laced with laughter. "You're never escaping us." None of them did. He scanned the room. It was sparse, with the faint outline of sad-looking furniture. A table overturned, chairs scattered as if a scuffle had taken place. The walls were lined with pictures, the faces smudged, eyes watching him, hollow and accusing. That's when he saw it. A set of stairs leading down into darkness, the gloom swallowing the few rays of light that dared intrude. A chance to escape? Or the deeper recesses of hell? The whispers intensified. He could feel them lurking beyond the door, waiting for a crack to seep through. Jack's pulse quickened. He made his choice. Without hesitating, he bolted to the stairs, desperation mingling with dread. The darkness below loomed like a hungry beast, but as he descended, a flicker of light suddenly pierced the void, revealing the unmistakable shape of a figure, the wild-eyed man from before. "You've come to play?" the apparition asked, voice a cold rasp filled with wicked glee. Jack's heart stopped as he faced the familiar terror. Caught between the relentless shadows above and the unseen horrors below, he finally understood one inescapable truth. Wherever he ran, darkness was home. And in that moment, confusion spiraled. What lay beneath the surface? Survival? Or would he again play into the hands of the unspeakable? With the echoes of the man's laughter trailing off behind him, Jack felt the weight of the shadows close in from above. "A choice is coming, Jack," it whispered. So many choices. But where would this one lead him? Jack's breath came in ragged gasps as the figure loomed closer. The wild-eyed man grinned, teeth sharp and unnatural, his laughter echoing through the stagnant air. "You're in for a real treat," he said, gesturing dramatically. The dim light flickered around them, casting fleeting shadows that danced ominously on the stone walls. Jack forced himself to back away, heart pounding against his ribs. "What do you want from me?" The man leaned in, the stench of rot stronger now. "Nothing you haven't already given. You're already compromised, Jack. You slipped into our world the moment you stepped into the forest." The truth hung heavy in the air. Jack felt the gnawing dread in his gut. "I can't be part of this. I want to leave." His voice cracked, desperation spilling out. "Leave?" The man snorted, eyes glinting like shards of glass in the small light. "You think anyone truly leaves this place? They either join us or they become part of the collection." Images flashed in Jack's mind. Those smudged faces on the walls above, the eyes that had seemed so accusatory now swirling with something more sinister. Were they lost souls, trapped like him? "What collection?" he stammered. "Why, the collection of lost souls, of course." The man waved a hand dismissively. "You're just another trophy waiting to be displayed, or devoured." Jack turned abruptly, eyes darting toward the stairs he'd just descended. The shadows stirred and cold whispers slithered around his ankles, a reminder of the danger lurking above. All of it felt like a trap made just for him. "Don't be foolish, boy." The man's voice echoed sharply, slicing through the tension. "You cannot escape. They will find you." Shivering, Jack felt the dread wrap tightly around him, each breath becoming harder to muster. He leaned against the wall, desperately considering his options. Stay or run? Neither option seemed safe. Was the figure truly another lost soul, or was he the warden of this forsaken realm? Jack's mind raced with uncertainty, trapped in a world where every corner turned seemed to lead deeper into the dark. "Look behind you, Jack!" the man shrieked suddenly, excitement tinged with malice. "Your friends are waiting." Jack's heart dropped. Friends? But he was alone, wasn't he? Slowly he turned back. The flickering light steadied, and he squinted into the shadows. Figures emerged, shifting shapes that hung in the darkness, faces half-formed, whispers rising like a chilling wind. They were real. They were here. He felt bile rise in his throat. "You can't escape the game," the apparition continued, his grin widening. "They'll tire of waiting, and when they do, oh, the fun we'll have." Jack stumbled backward, scanning for an exit, desperation flooding his veins. The shadows danced, mocking his fears, pulling him deeper into this nightmare. Suddenly a loud crunch echoed from above, a shift that made the structure tremble. The ceiling cracked, splintering as pieces fell around him, raising clouds of dust that hung thickly in the air. The shadows above screeched, howling their frustration. "What's happening?" Jack shouted, panic clawing at the edges of his lungs. "Just a little party," the man said with a tilt of his head, his gaze gleaming. "A reminder of what awaits if you linger too long." Realizing the cabin might collapse, Jack turned again toward the darkened stairs. An option to escape or the doom of staying. The choice felt crushing, constricting like a vice around his mind. There was a brief moment of light. A thin beam pierced through the chaos, illuminating the staircase once more. "Choose, Jack," the man demanded, voice rising with fury. "Stay with us or be lost among the shadows." His instincts screamed to flee, but was the exit a true escape? Or just another trap laid before him? Jack hesitated, caught between the feral shadows above and the man's wicked grin below. "Your decision matters," the wild-eyed man hissed, the shadows swirling tighter around them. As the walls trembled, Jack took a resolute step toward the light. But as the darkness clawed at his heels, he couldn't shake the chilling notion that he might be stepping into something far worse than he could ever expect. What lay ahead? The whispers grew louder, chanting his name like a sacrament, beckoning him back into the abyss. And there, in that fragile moment of choice, Jack felt the true terror come alive within him. Would he uncover salvation, or would he step deeper into the horror? Jack plunged into the light, the air crackling around him like static. He felt an unseen hand graze his back, dragging dread behind him. The whispering intensified, a chorus of soft, sharp voices clawing at his mind. He stumbled up the staircase, heart racing, every step a battle against the weight of the shadows below. He reached the landing, gasping for breath. The air was thick, suffocating, each inhalation a struggle. It felt like he was being swallowed whole by the darkness below. The dim hallway stretched before him, the flickering lights casting serpentine shadows that slithered across the walls. "Don't just stand there," a voice hissed. It was familiar, like a half-remembered dream. Jack turned, eyes wide, scrambling to piece together who it belonged to. "Emily?" he called, straining to focus. He could almost see her silhouette at the end of the hallway, her long hair dancing like smoke. "Is that you?" "Jack, I'm here." She stepped into the flickering light, face pale, eyes filled with terror. "We have to get out." But her voice was swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere, as if the cabin itself tried to silence them. "Jack!" The shadows behind her coiled tighter, swirling with more menacing intent. "You need to run. They're coming." Panic surged. "Who's coming?" Jack's heart pounded louder than the echoes of their footsteps. He took a step toward her, desperation clawing at the front of his mind. "Don't be fooled," Emily screamed, her voice trembling. "It's not safe. They're playing with us. We need to find the exit." The walls pulsed as if alive, thrumming with a heartbeat that synced to Jack's frantic pulse. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes on him, the shadows whispering promises of despair. "Run," she urged, eyes darting back down the hallway. He took her hand, trembling, and together they turned to face the darkness behind them. But another figure stepped out from the haze, a man, wild-eyed with a sharpened grin, the one who had taunted Jack in the cellar. "Oh, you're really going to regret this." Jack pulled Emily back, fear coiling around them like a deadly vine. "What do you want?" he shouted, his voice trembling. "I want to introduce you to the family." The man laughed, and with a snap of his fingers, the shadows surged forward. They surged closer, vibrant and alive, swirling like a storm of anguish. In a panic, Jack thought of the collection, the faces from the walls, and he could feel their haunting gazes boring into him, holding memories of grief and loss. Emily squeezed his hand tighter. "We can't stay here." Without thinking, they turned and fled down the narrow hallway. The laughter pursued, taunting, echoing, drowning them in dread. The walls vibrated with each footfall as they ran, the weight of the cabin closing in. The door at the far end beckoned, a small beacon of hope. Jack's heart raced as he pushed them faster, every ounce of strength driven by fear. A voice echoed in their minds, the wild-eyed man's words wrapping around them like chains. "Join us!" "What if we don't make it?" Emily gasped, breathless, despair creeping into her voice. "Don't think about it," Jack shouted back. "We will!" They slammed into the door, pressing against it with all their might, adrenaline surging through them. The echoes of laughter grew louder, the shadows clawing at their heels. Jack felt the door give. Just a crack. Hope surged, but it was quickly snuffed by the feeling of something cold wrapping around his ankle. He stumbled, trying to pull away, but the grip was relentless, dragging him. "Jack!" Emily shrieked, fingertips slipping from his grasp as she tried to hold on. With a final, desperate heave, he burst through the door, falling into the light of the outside world. But the shadows poured through after him, engulfing Emily in their depths. "Don't leave me," she cried, her voice desperate, fading into the dark. Jack found himself alone, the night eerily still. The forest loomed around him, the oppressive weight of the cabin retreating. But in the stillness he could hear Emily's voice echoing in the depths, calling out, lost in the darkness. A chill washed over him. He had to go back. "Emily!" he shouted into the dark void, trepidation slicing through his resolve. What was waiting for him in that hellish cabin? The shadows quivered with intent, and Jack felt their hunger. As he stood there, heart racing, the trepidation of choice loomed larger than before. Would he dare return to save her? Or was he too late to uncover the ghastly truth waiting in the darkness? Jack's chest heaved, suffocating under the weight of his decision. Emily's cries echoed in his mind, reverberating like a drum, a call to action against the paralyzing fear gripping him. He couldn't abandon her. Not now. Shadows danced at the edges of the forest, flickering malevolent images that urged him to retreat. "Emily!" he called out, voice stronger than he felt. "I'm coming back." Every step toward the cabin felt ominous, the air thick with dread. Jack fought to steady his breath, heart thudding like a war drum. He neared the door that had nearly consumed him just moments before. Driven by determination, he pushed the door open, anxiety coiling around his throat like a snake. The interior was cloaked in darkness, thick and suffocating. He strained to hear Emily's voice above the buzz of whispering shadows. "Stay close. I won't leave you," he shouted, dread entwined with hope. "Jack!" Her voice floated through the void, terrified, desperate. He squinted against the blackness, fearing what might lurch from the shadows at any moment. "Emily, where are you?" he asked, fighting against the oppressive sound of the whispering dark. Each syllable seemed to incite the shadows, making them sharper, more pronounced, as if they awakened with the sound of her name. "Please, help!" Her voice echoed, tiny and lost. Jack's pulse quickened, every fiber of his being screaming for him to find her. He stepped deeper into the cabin, cautiously traversing the debris-laden floor. The familiar stench of rot coated the air, each breath bitter with memories he wished to forget. The whispers surged around him, a cacophony of despair. They beckoned him, seductive and haunting. "Come play, Jack, forever, join us." He closed his eyes against the darkness pressing in, willing himself to move forward. He needed to be the light amid the shadows. "Help is coming," he shouted defiantly, pushing back against the swirling insanity that threatened to engulf him. Then he spotted a glow emanating from beneath a door at the end of the hallway. Was that light? Hope. He moved toward it, shadows writhing and extending their wicked fingers, begging him to turn back. But no, he couldn't falter. Not now. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in a pale, strange luminescence. Jack's heart raced as he stepped inside, torn between horror and desire, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Dozens of faces hung on the walls, twisted, suffering souls trapped in a nightmare. They bore witness to his horror, their mouths frozen in silent screams. Each face struck him hard, tethering him to their reality. "Emily!" he yelled, panic flooding his voice once more. "Jack!" her muffled voice responded, echoing from within the collection of shadows coiling like serpents around him, grasping for a grip on his soul. His heart sank as an icy presence loomed behind him, closing the door with a deafening thud, plunging him deeper into darkness. He spun around to face the wild-eyed man, the villain he hoped never to see again, his grin stretching wider and sharper. "I told you," he sneered. "You cannot escape this game." Shadows drew closer, creeping toward Jack like they had claimed many before him. But Jack felt a fire ignite within him. He was done being a pawn in this twisted game. "Get away from me!" he shouted, pushing against the swell of darkness. Desperation surged through his veins, urging him onward. "You think you can just leave?" The wild-eyed man laughed, a sickening sound that ricocheted off the walls of the confined space. "They're hungry for your fear. They'll never let you go." "But I'm not afraid," Jack barked back, channeling everything he had into his declaration. It was now or never. Escaping felt impossibly close and painfully far. A last-ditch effort, he imagined the light. The crackle of hope surged in him as he lunged for the swirling shadows. "Emily, I'm coming." With every ounce of resolve, he burst through the crowd of whispers, feeling his way through the darkness. "Jack!" Emily cried out, her voice like an anchor. Jack followed the sound, clawing through the oppressive shadows until he found her. She was trapped, writhing against invisible restraints, fear etched into her features. "Hold on, I'll get you out." He reached for her, and as he gripped her hand tightly, something shifted. A blinding light erupted from within them, forcing the shadows back, screeching as if scalded by the brightness. Jack felt adrenaline flood his senses as he pulled Emily to her feet. "Run," he urged, voice raw. Together they sprinted toward the door, the shadows recoiling, battling against the radiance emanating from them. "Go! We can break free," Jack urged, pulling Emily along as they fled down the hallway, now illuminated in defiance of the dark. As they burst through the doors and into the night, shadows writhed behind them, howling in frustration. They stumbled into the open forest, breathless under the moonlight, the oppressive weight just behind them. Jack turned around and watched in awe as the cabin receded, swallowed by darkness, shadows clawing at the edges but failing to step into the light. "Is it over?" Emily whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "For now," Jack replied, grasping her hand tightly. But the air felt different, lighter. The forest was no longer an enemy. It was a refuge. They spotted the faint outline of their neighborhood in the distance, safe and warm. Together, they took a step, then another, feeling the solid ground beneath them. The chilling nightmares of the past began to fade as dawn broke on the horizon. "Let's go home," Jack said, voice steadier than before. They walked into the light, leaving behind the darkness that had tried to consume them. And as they stepped forward, the whispers of despair soothed into silence, leaving only the echo of their laughter to fill the waking world anew. But beneath their feet, the remnants of shadows still stirred, waiting, watching, and biding their time for the next unwitting soul. "Now, before you go, I have an urgent message. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately. You cannot afford to miss the next exclusive stories that are waiting for you just around the corner. Smash that like button now. This is the moment to show your support. It's critical for the algorithm, and trust me, it makes a huge difference. Flood the comment section below with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. How do you think Jack and Emily will handle their new reality? And listen up. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. You're part of this journey. Let's keep it going.